Lauma is finally here, and man, this tall Dendro lady is pretty crazy when it comes to boosting existing teams, which is why in this Lauma's Ultimate Guide video, I will go through every team comp and show you the best artifact and weapon loadouts in each of them, while at the same time, I'll also provide a brief explanation of Lauma's kit and constellations. Now, keep in mind, this video was made thanks to Creator Experience server, so content shown here is subject to change in the global version. Also, Genshin Luna 1 version is finally live, which means the new Nodgride region is available for exploration. And with the anniversary around the corner, a lot of rewards will be given away. Plus, you can get a free 5-star from the selector, and free constellations for many units as well. So be sure to download Genshin by using my link in the description and experience the new Luna 1 version. Alright, so in a nutshell, Lauma specializes in boosting Bloom, Hyper Bloom, and Burgeon teams, usually resulting in about 40 to 50% better team damage. And with this massive boost in performance, teams like Nilo Bloom and Hyper Bloom essentially are now able to compete with top meta teams, more or less. Now, she can also boost the new Lunar Bloom damage, although currently, the only source that can deal this type of damage is her skill. But in the future, once a dedicated Lunar Bloom unit comes out, they will be good together with Lauma. But moving over to the kit explanation, many videos, including the one I posted previously, have gone into great detail explaining how she works. So instead, I will briefly cover her abilities so we can focus on the build options and teams. Although, honestly, she's quite simple once you understand the basics. So, the main thing you need to know is that Lauma is able to boost Bloom, Hyper Bloom, Burgeon, and Lunar Bloom damage after she casts the burst. This burst won't deal any damage to enemies, and instead, 18 Pale Hymn stacks are generated, and whenever anyone causes one of those reactions I've just mentioned, one stack per enemy hit by the reaction will be consumed, and the damage of that reaction will be improved based on Lauma's elemental mastery. Now, you can also obtain more Pale Hymn stacks, and that is by using her skill, more specifically, by holding down a skill. To put it simply, when Lauma is in the team, Bloom reactions become Lunar Bloom, but it still generates the Dendro core on the ground, and the only thing that changes with this reaction is that there's a team-wide resource now called Verdant Dew, which you can track here, and it will be filled up by causing Lunar Blooms. There's a delay of at least 2.5 seconds before the next Verdant Dew can fill up, but you can obtain a maximum of 3 of these stacks. Then, when you hold down the skill, based on how many dews the party had, Lauma consumes them, deals a special Lunar Bloom type damage to enemy, which scales with EM, and for every Verdant Dew the party had, usually this results in a pretty big hit, ranging from 100k to 300k damage. And then, every Verdant Dew consumed also grants Moonsong stack. And then, if you cast the burst, each Moonsong is converted to 6 Pale Hymn stacks, up to a maximum of 18. However, and I cannot stress this enough, even after the burst is casted, for 15 seconds, you can still use Hold skill and immediately convert Moonsongs to Pale Hymn. So, long story short, Lunar Bloom creates Verdant Dew, Hold skill consumes each Verdant Dew to create Moonsongs, and then Moonsongs are consumed by the burst. The burst always gives 18 Pale Hymn by default, and then before or after the burst, when using her Hold skill, you can obtain up to 18 more. And then, yeah, the skill by itself, whether you tap or hold, deals low Dendro damage every 2 seconds for up to 8 times while following the active unit, and whenever enemy is hit by the skill, their Dendro and Hydro resistance will be reduced for 10 seconds. So effectively, after last hit, this duration can be up to 25 seconds. Just keep in mind, hold version of the skill is always recommended to use whenever you have Verdant Dew to create Pale Hymns and cause big Lunar Bloom type damage attack. Finally, her normal attacks will be used when playing her on field in some teams like Hyper Bloom, but I don't recommend leveling them too much because they don't hit for much damage anyway, and her charge attack is basically used for exploration. And yeah, as for the passives, third passive talent is the one that allows her team to cause Lunar Bloom instead of Bloom reactions, while at the same time, Lunar Bloom damage can be increased by up to 14%, which can be easily maxed out with shown EM here, and she also improves Moonsign level by 1, which I'll briefly cover in team section again. Then second passive, this one's slightly improves her skill damage, but not the Lunar Bloom attack she causes with Hold skill, based on how much EM she has, and the maximum cap is shown here, while her charge attack travel form cooldown can also be reduced, based on how much EM she has. Finally, first passive determines what bonus she grants to reactions based on whether the team has 1 or 2 Nodgride units. If there's only 1 unit, or basically just Lauma in the team, then Bloom, Hyper Bloom, and Burgeon can now score critical hits with a 15% critical rate chance and fixed 100% crit damage. Critical rate can stack together with Nahida's C2. But if there's 2 Nodgride units in the team, then Lunar Bloom damage gains 10% critical rate and 20% critical damage. Keep in mind, for now, this only benefits Lauma's Hold skill attack, the one that deals Lunar Bloom damage. Nothing else in the game currently benefits from this. So in other words, when it comes to this passive, playing 2 Nodgride units only benefits Lauma and no one else. Alright, with the kit overview out of the way, let's finally talk about all the build options. Okay, first of all, when it comes to talents leveling priority, I highly recommend maxing out the skill because 25% resistance shred for both Hydro and Dendro is amazing, but also make sure to raise the burst to level 9 at least. The difference in damage boosting between level 9 and 10 is not that impressive, but hey, if you want the best, crown it as well. As for normal attacks, you can raise it to level 6 I guess, if you're planning to play Lauma on field in Hyperbloom teams, but the damage gain is minimal. Anyway, there are many ways you can optimize Lauma's potential, and I'll go through many such cases. But if you're just looking for the best general build, then it's going to be Deepwood Artifact set along with Aetherlight Spindalute Catalyst, which will be available from September 12th event Clank Clank Clash. Now, Deepwood can be equipped by anyone really, as long as they can do some off-field damage to upkeep the Dendro resistance shred, but it works really well on Lauma, while the event weapon is basically going to be her best in slot choice as a free-to-play option, and there's really only the signature which outperforms it, while other options, which I'll discuss later, are more of a niche cases, sometimes offering slightly better results in certain teams. And as for the stats, triple elemental mastery main stats is the best approach if using Spindalute because, in general, she does need about 140 to 150% energy recharge in most teams, which will be covered by Spindalute's substat, which offers 45.9% ER, and then a couple of ER substat rolls will be useful too. Otherwise, since her Lunar Bloom damage coming from hold skill can critical hit, you could go for critical rate circlet, and if you're not going to be using a weapon with ER substat, then I do recommend using ER Sands instead, unless you manage to obtain at least 40% ER from substats. Speaking of which, obviously you want to get as much EM as possible from Flower and Feather, but at the same time, since her hold skill Lunar Bloom damage can crit and benefit from crit damage as well, you'll want to obtain critical rate and damage substat on every piece. Ideally, you always want to have critical rate and damage at least on every piece, then a lot of EM on Flower and Feather, and whenever possible, if the piece has energy recharge substat, that's also great because she can burst more than once during a single rotation, since the burst cooldown is only 15 seconds. And for example, this build can easily work in Nilobloom or Hyperbloom teams. She has enough energy recharge to trigger the burst consistently, and plenty of elemental mastery to boost reactions. That's all you really need to make Lauma work, and elevate those two team archetypes. However, there are some edge cases, so let's talk about this now. Okay, so starting with Nilobloom, if Nahida is in the team and she's using Deepwood, you can then give Lauma either the new Silken Moon Serenade set, which will increase everyone's EM by 60 if she's the only Nodcry unit in the team, plus improve lunar reaction damage by 10%, which also applies to her hold skill Lunar Bloom attack. Otherwise, Gilded Dreams could also be great since it provides Lauma with more EM than Silken Moon, but on the flip side, you are losing out on a team-wide 60 EM boost. But all in all, they are pretty much tied to each other. However, since these new Nodicry sets actually don't care who the wielder is, it just cares about the party's moonsign level, anybody can use this set and still trigger the team-wide buff. Speaking of which, here's a quick reminder how moonsign works. With one Nodcry unit, the team gains Nascent Gleam effect, which enables on Lauma's kit the ability to score critical hits with Bloom, Hyperbloom, and Burgeon. Plus, Silken Moon set gives 60 EM for the party. But with two Nodcry units, now the team has Ascendant Gleam, which grants a new party ability. Any unit who does not provide moonsign level, or basically someone who is not from Nodcry, those units can help increase lunar reaction damage by up to 36% based on their stat when they deal elemental damage with burst or skill, and you can see this reference table shown here to max it out. Besides that, Silken Moon now provides 120 instead of 60 EM boost for the whole party, and some new weapons also refer to Ascendant Gleam when it comes to their passives. But yeah, going back to other loadouts, let's say you use Aino in the team. Now, you can use both new sets. You could equip Lauma with Night of the Sky's Unveiling 4 set, which in result gives 30% critical rate boost and 80 EM from 2 set, and this means her hold skill will much more likely be able to score a critical hit. You could also give Lauma the new craftable catalyst Black Marrow, which will significantly improve her Lunar Bloom damage coming from the skill. Although the 96% Bloom damage boost, yeah, she doesn't really trigger blooms that often in Nilo teams, unless you're playing with another Hydro unit like Yalan, so Hydro Aura becomes prevalent. But overall, this weapon is mostly there to improve her skill damage. And also, since Aino is in the team, Silken Moon set can be equipped by her to give that 120 EM boost for the party. However, what if, let's say, the team is made up of Nilo, Kave, Lauma, and Xingqiu? Well, in this case, Xingqiu will be the one triggering most of the blooms, so he should be built with full EM, while Kaveh or Lauma should be equipped with Deepwood or Silken Moon set. Doesn't matter who uses which set, but both sets are recommended. You could also use Baizhu instead of Kaveh to keep the whole team alive with healing. One thing I do want to note, I'm not sure yet about this, but in this server, the recoil damage coming from blooms seems to be halved compared to global server. So if it turns out this is the case, and I will make sure to let you know in the pinned comment, for healers like Kokomi who will be triggering a lot of blooms, previously it was the norm to go with a mixture of healing and EM to keep her alive. But with this new nerf on recoil damage, it's absolutely fine to just build Kokomi or any other healer who will trigger blooms with a full EM set. Now, moving over to Hyper Bloom comps, in most cases, Deepwood set is recommended here. No matter if you go with double Hydro Yalan and Xingqiu or with Electro DPS like Clarence and Sino, Deepwood is the answer on Lauma. Now, interestingly enough, if you go with Neuvillette, Furina, and Inefa, which is shaping up to be quite the powerful comp, you will be losing out on the ability to cause critical hits with Hyper Bloom, since Inefa pushes Moonsign level to Ascendant Gleam, which means Lauma's hold skill improves instead, and you can now give Silken Moon set to Furina to boost everyone's EM, while Inefa is on Gilded Dreams to maximize everyone's elemental mastery. Well, it won't matter to Furina or Nui, but EM is super beneficial for both Inefa and Lauma. Now, if you want to go with a Burgeon comp, right now I'd say it's a pretty decent team archetype, especially with Lauma boosting Burgeon damage, but it's gonna be weaker than Hyper Bloom and a lot weaker than Nilo Bloom. The hierarchy of power level goes like this: Nilo teams are usually the strongest, then Hyper Bloom, then Burgeon. Still, if you do go for a Burgeon comp with a team like Kokomi, Xingqiu, and Toma, give Toma something like Flop set, Kokomi on Deepwood with Sacrificial Fragments, and Lauma with Gilded Dreams and Event Catalyst. By the way, if you don't want to use the Event Catalyst or don't have it yet, some alternative but weaker options you could go for could be Fully Refined Wandering Even Star or Sacrificial Fragments, mostly there to just give her big EM boost from Substat. I only recommend equipping her with Black Marrow Lantern if in a team with another Nodcry unit like Aino or Inefa. Otherwise, for just raw stats, you can use either Nahida's or Siglali's signature weapons. And of course, as always, her signature is the best option, no matter in which team she is. But it is possible you will need to use Energy Recharge Sands to meet the ER requirements, especially if she's not equipped with Silken Moon set, which gives 20% ER from 2 set bonus. Finally, outside any Bloom-related team, you can play Lauma together with Kinich. In this case, give her Deepwood set and Thrilling Tales, and then this way she will give a massive attack boost to Kinich and reduce enemies' Dendro resistance significantly. But that's all she's good for here. Her personal damage and reaction boosting won't matter. And if she's in Mulani Burn Vape team, same thing. She can be good if you give her something like Nahida's signature and Instructor set to give 200 EM boost from Mulani's vapes. All in all, the most simple solution is to just roll with Deepwood plus the new Event Catalyst, and Lauma will be doing excellent supporting in 99% of the cases. Otherwise, if you want to squeeze out a little extra of her personal damage with another Nodcry unit, then she can use something like the new Night Sky Nodcry set or Gilded Dreams along with Black Marrow Craftable. And if there's already someone in the team with Deepwood set, then she can be great with just Silken Moon set or Gilded Dreams. Also, keep in mind, if you have a lot of ER on Lauma, it's possible, due to her burst's cooldown being only 15 seconds short, you can swap to her whenever the burst is available to obtain more Pale Hymn stacks, since most Bloom and Hyper Bloom teams don't care too much about rotation consistency. Okay, so looking at Constellations, C1 is pretty much just a quality of life improvement, and by that I mean when Lauma casts her skill or burst, for 20 seconds she will heal the party by 500% of her EM every 1.9 seconds or so, and without any healing bonus, and assuming she has at least 1200 EM, this would result in 6000 HP heals, which is pretty nice. In addition, her Spirit Envoy travel mode will last longer and consume less stamina. Honestly, outside Nilo Bloom teams and Furina comp with Neuvillette, this healing isn't that super relevant, unless you run her in Hyper Bloom teams without a healer, like using Raiden instead of Cookie. So all in all, a decent, but definitely not the most amazing upgrade. Now, C2 is where things get interesting. Pale Hymns will further boost the reaction damage, hence Ascendant Gleam teams will also receive 40% Lunar Bloom damage increase. This, more or less, doubles the reaction buffing, and on average, you can expect to further improve the team's overall damage by at least 15%, so C2 is really strong. C3 gives 3 additional levels to the burst, but this results in only a few percent improving overall damage. And then C4 helps her recover energy when her skill hits enemies. With this improvement, her ER requirements go down by about 30%, so even running her with 120 or a bit less energy recharge is totally fine now. And then C5 gives 3 additional levels to the skill, and this mostly matters for the hold skill that causes Lunar Bloom damage, but the improvement is about 4 to 6% for her personal damage. And then finally there's C6, which basically turns her into a Lunar Bloom spamming damage dealer, which means the Night Sky artifact set becomes really good on her, and of course, that also means your bank account takes a heavy hit too. Overall, I'd say obtaining her signature is better compared to C1, since it provides at the minimum around 10% damage increase. But if you're planning to pull for more copies of her, then C2 is definitely the best stopping point because the overall damage increase is quite big, both for her personal and team's performance. And yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to this guide. Hope you found it useful, and I'd really appreciate it if you could press the like button on this video and help support my channel by subscribing to me. Thanks, and see you very soon.